In Godot, a resource is anything that it saves to or loads from the disk, such as textures, audio files, and even scripts. Typically acting as data containers, resources allow for optimized access to these files by caching them while in use, so that if multiple objects need to use the same resource, it's only loaded into memory once. Whether you know it or not, if you're making a game with Godot, then you're making use of its built-in resources in one way or another. But you can also create your own custom resources that can do a lot more, which is something I've been doing in all of my games for several years now due to just how nice they are to work with. Let's take a look at what they are, how to use them, and some gotchas you might run into. As mentioned, resources primarily act as data containers that are enhanced by Godot. With custom resources, you can define exported properties you can edit right in the inspector, run custom code, and even nest other resources within them. In my tactics game Unto Deepest Depths, for instance, the player's progress is tracked via a custom resource, with fields for things such as how far the player has gotten in a run, how much XP they've earned, and what units they have, which are, in fact, defined by their own custom resources defining what kind of unit they are, their stats, and more. Creating your own resource is as simple as creating a script, giving it a class name, and extending from the resource class. But you can also inherit from other resource types if you want, including other custom resources. After that, the typical flow will be to add some properties that can be customized in the inspector by exporting them the same as you would on a node. From here, if you have another node or resource that exports your custom resource type, you can create an instance of it right in the inspector, or create an instance of the resource in your game's files. Either way, you can then open up the resource, edit it right in the inspector, and then use it the same as you would any other resource. Additionally, if you prefer, you can also load or preload the resource if you want to do so directly via code. Like other code in your game, you can also add constants, functions, signals, and more to your resources if you want to encapsulate some additional data or functionality. From there, you're ready to start using custom resources as you see fit, but there are a few more things you may want to know. The most important of which is to note that resources do not have access to the scene tree, meaning you cannot directly access functions like process, physics process, or the input callbacks. If you require access to these, you'll need to write a custom function in your resource and then call it from an object that does have access to the scene tree, such as a node. Another important thing that may trip you up is that memory optimization I mentioned before. To avoid loading the same resource into memory multiple times, Godot loads it once and then shares that reference with everything that accesses it. On the one hand, this is a good thing as it means you can reference your custom resource throughout your application and know that you're working with the canonical source of truth. On the other hand, if you want multiple instances of the same resource type to not share data, you have to make sure you're explicitly using a unique copy where appropriate. Another thing to note is that if you take a look at the inheritance tree of the resource class, you'll notice that it inherits from the ref-counted class, which I've talked about previously. What's important to note for resources is that if they aren't being used, they may be unloaded from memory, meaning runtime changes that haven't been saved somewhere will be lost. And lastly, let's talk about one more feature of resources that is both helpful but a little tricky. You can save and load resources to and from the disk with GDScript using the resource saver and resource loader singletons. Referencing Unto Deepest Depths once again, I built a custom plugin to help me view and edit unit data that made use of these singletons. But there's one very important thing to know about saving and loading resources, and that is, at least as of this video, loading resources external to your codebase is not safe. As we've seen, resources can contain code, and this includes code that can be run automatically when a resource is being loaded by the engine, allowing for arbitrary code execution to occur the moment the resource is loaded. For resources internal to the game that you, the developer, have made, this is not an issue. But this does mean that you should not use the save load feature for resources external to your own game's source code, such as for saving player progress, sharing content add-ons, and the like, since a malicious user could share a save file with another user that contains more than just the player's progress. Instead, you should follow the official recommendations for handling save data. And that's a quick look at using custom resources in Godot. They're a great choice for data containers that support some additional functionality due to their ability to run code, and something I reach for often when I want to store things like custom configurations and the like.